Joining us on the line right now is our good friend Eli Lake, national security analyst. Good day to have him, given all that's going on right now with Iran. We got these nuclear discussions going on one side. On the other side, we're sending our Navy out to intercept their Navy because they're sending a bunch of weapons, we think, to Yemen. Eli, by the way, Eli with Bloomberg is a columnist for Bloomberg View. Hey, Eli, good morning.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
All right, so, how seriously should we take the fact that we are now sending maybe as many as 2 aircraft carriers toward that direction to intercept the Iranian Navy, which, has some decent ships and anti-ship missiles, and, they have diesel submarines, which are very, very quiet and very, very sneaky. How concerned should we be?
You've heard of smart power. Well, this is brilliant power. Because, before people could say, if you look at the Middle East, the U.S. seems to be on, kind of aligned indirectly with Iran and Iraq, but, is sort of against Iran and Syria. But now we've brought the experience to one country, Yemen, where the enemies of the Houthis, which is known as AQAP or Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, we're still striking them with drones, even though our special operations guys have been driven out of Yemen, and we had to evacuate the embassy and CIA station in Sana'a. The U.S. has nonetheless managed last week to conduct another drone strike against a fairly senior official from the group. And now it's trying to intercept weapons shipments to the enemies of AQAP, the Houthis, and we're providing logistical support and some targeting advice to the Saudis as they pound Houthi positions in Yemen that are being supported by the Iranians.
So we're fighting
on behalf of the Iranians in Iraq.
So we are fighting AQAP, and they're the Sunnis, right?
Well, yes.
Mostly
they are. Not to say that the AQAP though is you can no longer say they're really the
Sunni,
cat's paw of Saudi
you.
Arabia.
All right, so we're going against AQAP with our drones, and we're helping the Saudis fight the Houthis, who are fighting also AQAP. And now we're sending our our Navy into the region to intercept ships from Iran that were going to aid the Houthi rebels.
Right. And
do I have that right?
Yes, and add to that, wonderful to send U.S. ships into the Gulf to try to stop Iranian arms shipments to the Houthis. That is an admirable goal. A little too late, considering the fact that the well-armed Houthis, with Iranian sort of advice in the field, was able to unseat the elected government of President Hadi, who was an American ally, even though he would have to have stood for. I think his term ended in February. So, but the point here is that, finally Obama does something like this against the Iranian shipments to the Houthis. But, there's an argument that he should have done this a year ago, so maybe the Houthis would not have become such a threat to the point where they would be able to unseat a friendly pro-American government in Yemen.
And Eli Lake, speaking of something that the Obama administration could have done a year ago, you reveal in one of your latest columns at Bloomberg that the Obama administration was keeping something tightly under wraps with regard to Iran's potential nuclear weapons capability. What did you learn here?
Well, this is a little bit of a technical thing, but I think it's extremely important. What Obama said before the negotiations with Iran began in 2013, while there were still some secret talks to set up these negotiations, was that Iran was more than a year away from having a weapon, which was contrasted to the Israelis that were saying things were far more urgent. What he didn't say publicly then was what was acknowledged by the Energy Secretary Ernest Moniz in a sit-down with Bloomberg, which is that for quite some time the U.S. government has also believed the Iranians were 2 to 3 months away from being able to enrich enough uranium or create enough nuclear fuel for a single bomb. But here's the catch. When he began selling the nuclear deal, he said, if we don't get this deal, the Iranians today are only 2 to 3 months away from getting that nuclear fuel.
Wow.
And the day before he made that, I learned that that the intelligence community declassified that estimate, which was still kind of officially a secret. I should say that John Kerry said something similar about a year ago, but he didn't quite link it publicly to U.S. intelligence estimates, and it really wasn't repeated after he said this in a Senate hearing about a year ago.
So the timeline for Iran to actually develop the capabilities here, that was classified right up until the day before the president needs to start pitching the deal to Congress, and then he declassifies the fact that they're 3 months out.
Yes, correct. And
wow.
and the way he used to talk about it was when he didn't want to create a sense of urgency around the program, when Congress was threatening sanctions, he used to say, oh, they're, more than a year away.
Right.
And now he's saying if you do this deal, they'll be a year away from that kind of breakout, which is admittedly different than getting a weapon. It's just the fuel for one bomb, but still, it's an interesting point.
It only takes one.
They
That's right.
declassified it when they did.
All right, so on one hand, we're trying to negotiate a nuclear deal with Iran. And on the other hand, their Navy is out there causing all kinds of problems on the world stage. And at the White House, they're suggesting, well, you shouldn't connect the two. Well, should you connect the two?
I believe that it's crazy not to connect the two, because really what you're talking about is that any kind of arms control agreement, but particularly one that's complicated, requires a great deal of trust in both sides. And I think that the president has done quite a bit to try to convince the Iranians that the U.S. is really looking for a new kind of relationship. The Iranians, I think, have responded in terms of the actual nuclear negotiations in kind. They've kept this interim agreement. On everything else, they've ramped up aggressive behavior. There have been, in the last year, something like more than 700 state executions in Iran. The leaders of the Green Movement remain under house arrest or real jail. Then that doesn't say anything about Yemen, Syria, and all over the region. All of our allies are saying Iranian behavior is even more aggressive during this negotiating process. So that tells us a lot about the intentions of the regime that we're bargaining with. And so far the answer has been defiance, contempt, distrust. And it does feel like they're getting something over on us.
Well, and of course, and let's not forget Death to America, which continues to be the chant every weekend after Friday prayers.
Death to America, Death to Israel, all of it. And so, the argument, I mean, you could say it's a testable position. We've reached out, we're in these negotiations. There has been a relaxation of some of the sanctions, and some of the economic relief, has been provided, although a lot more is being promised. And the response from the Iranians has been, to kind of go in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And so I'm sort of wondering, what exactly do they think is going to happen when they free up even more money for them upon a deal? And, do they think they can trust it? The Iranians are also saying, by the way, on the nuclear file, that, they still will not allow access to military sites. They want all the sanctions released up front. They accuse President Obama of being dishonest and tricking people when he put out his fact sheet. So all of that does not augur well for their intentions.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, but we'll probably be tapping back into your expertise as we go forward here. Thanks, Eli.
Thank you.